Today, for the Bringing Back Basic Gray collaboration, we're going to take some older Basic Gray paper from the Perhaps collection to create a one-page scrapbook layout.
Hey, it's Beth. Welcome. As I said, I am using the Perhaps collection today from Basic Gray to create a scrapbook layout about some spirit days that my girls had back in 2019. So the Bringing Back Basic Gray collaboration is a collab, just a small collab that I do with Sarah, who's crafting and relaxing here on YouTube, and Kathy, who is Stampin' Cat over on Instagram. And we found at some point that we had in common a big hoarded stash of Basic Gray paper. Basic Gray stopped making paper, I don't know exactly when, but they transitioned to making fabric instead. And we, back in the day, in the early 2000s when they were making paper, the three of us kind of fell in love with the paper style and tended to hoard the paper, I guess. So we decided that once a month and we are going to bring out some of our Basic Gray stash and put it to good use and enjoy using it instead of just keeping it locked away in a drawer or a cabinet somewhere. So that is what I'm doing here. I have 3 photos. It was like 3 different spirit days that my girls had. And I think the one on the left was a 1960s Spirit Day. The one on the right was an 80s Spirit Day. And then the one in the middle, I think it was a Disney Spirit Day. So my youngest is a Disney princess, but then my oldest was actually she had a field trip to a log cabin for a Pioneer Day. So she is kind of dressed as a pioneer, as pioneerish as we could get with what we had on hand. But so that middle picture is kind of a mix of days. But I thought this was a fun collection. They have a lot of pinks and greens in the photos, and this collection has a lot of pinks and greens, which is totally my jam. If you have followed me for any length of time, you know pink is my favorite color, and I do like the pink and green combination. So I was happy to use this collection, which I think was gifted to me from a subscriber through Happy Mail, and it came with some tags and letter stickers. So I was trying to figure out how I could use up some of those tags. One thing about Basic Gray is that their embellishments, they didn't always have, each collection didn't always have embellishments. And if they did, sometimes it was just tags or letter stickers. This one actually had both. Or sometimes it was just letter punch outs kind of thing. So I wanted to use the tags, and then I had to come up with some other embellishments. So in the past, I have taken Basic Gray scraps and just either punched or die cut shapes out of them so that I would have some embellishments to use going forward. And so once I get these tags, I decided to tuck them in behind the top of that right photo. And when I could, I put the tag hole down underneath the photo so it didn't really look like a tag. And then that oval one that I cut in half, I was able to cover up the hole with that middle tag. And then for the title, I took advantage of the letter stickers that came with the collection to spell out Spirit Days. However, since the letters are probably at least 12 years old, I do use some Barely Art glue to adhere them down just to make sure that they're going to stick. And I mean, they felt pretty sticky, but I'm always afraid to trust the old stickers. whether or not they're basic gray or not. There's a lot of old stickers in my stash. So I tend to use wet glue on them just to make sure that they will stay on the test of time in my scrapbooks, so that, a few years from now, they're not gonna decide to just become unsticky or whatever. But so I do add some wet glue to the back of those and then put them all back down, and then we'll bring in some of those shapes or the embellishments that I had made from scraps. So I have a lot of butterflies, and the butterfly colors seemed to work well. Like, they're not necessarily papers from this collection, but the colors seem to work well with this collection. So I bring in some butterflies, and then I think there's a chipboard flower that I'm going to bring in and add to that tag cluster on the top right. I apologize for sticking my head in the frame, but I was trying to get the letters as straight as I could, and for some reason was having a hard time kind of seeing it from the angle that I was working. So we'll add the dot to the eyes and can move on from that. And oddly enough, this is supposed to be a collaboration where we use basic gray paper, and I didn't really use a whole lot of the pattern paper. Like, that green paper is from the collection as well, but I didn't actually use a whole lot of pattern paper in this particular layout. There wasn't really room. So, and the point of scrapbooking truly is to showcase the photos. So that is kind of where I was going with this. But I pulled in a chipboard flower up there on the right that was left over from a collection, or from a kit. I think it was a page kit, a basic gray scrapbook page kit that I had. And then several different butterflies. There's a rub-on that was also left over from that page kit that I had. And then I'm going to pull in some other scraps for some little banners up there on the top. So I'm trying to keep with the triangle effect or triangle layout with the embellishments. So if you start in that top left corner just above the title and you go to the bottom right corner and then kind of back up to the top of that photo on the right and then back over to the title, it kind of creates a triangle. And that is just a scrapbook embellishment. Well, I think people use it in cards too, but I know a lot of times in scrapbooking it's just kind of a guideline, like, for your eyes to follow. It just looks nice. Like, there's just the way your eyes move across the page. So that was kind of why I put my little embellishment clusters where I did. And then I felt like that top left corner just needed a little bit of something else to help the title kind of stand out. So that is why I end up adding those little scrap pattern paper banners up there. And I just wanted to bring in some more of the pattern paper because I didn't really use a whole lot. So amazingly, the rub-ons still work really well, better than some more recent rub-ons that I've used. I just have like a little rub-on stick that came with something else and used that to rub that little heart on, and it was perfect. So and then as far as journaling, I'm just going to add the month or really the year, because I think this may have spanned some months, and then I'm just going to write what each day was like on around that photo, and that's really it. That's all I'm going to do as far as journaling. And then I decided it needed a little bit something else just to kind of accentuate the clusters that I did and bring a little sparkle. So I found a sequin mix that I had in my stash that had colors that worked, and brought that out, and I'm just going to scatter some sequins around each of those clusters. And I'm just using my little jewel picker tool to help me pull out the sequins from my little container. And then, me being me, I bumped it and spilled a bunch, so we'll have to clean that up here in a bit. But then I'm just using the jewel picker tool to help me kind of lift them up and then put them back down with the glue. So once I get my little sequin mess cleaned up here, I am done with this layout. Sarah and Kathy are linked in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for your time and hope you all have a very crafty day.